Today, I'm sharing the next Wooble that I made, Steve the Frankenstein, in honor of Halloween. I'm May, and this is May's Crochets. I'm a beginner crocheter sharing my learning to crochet journey. A lot of what I've been doing up until now to learn how to crochet has been working my way through a bunch of the Woobles Learn to Crochet kits. I've made a whole bunch of them, and I have videos on my channel of every single Wooble that I've made up until now. I will link my playlist here, but I only have a few left. There's a few holiday-related ones that I've kind of been saving for the holiday seasons. So today, I'm here to share my Halloween-related Wooble, which is Steve the Frankenstein. So let's dive in. Let's take a look. Here is the kit. This is the front of the kit. So here he is, Steve the Frankenstein. Yes, look how cute. And look at the nice little Halloween branding. And let's turn it around. So this is the back of the kit. So just like all the other Woobles, everything you need is included in the kit. So here we go. All the scary things included. We've got yarn, step-by-step videos, pre-started piece, crochet hook, stuffing, plastic eyes, yarn needle, and online instructions. So this one has some little special branding because it's special for Halloween. So let me show you the adorable crochet hook that came with it. Oh my gosh, look at this. So I've talked about this in other videos, but unfortunately the actual quality of the Woobles crochet hooks is a little bit hit or miss, so I don't actually use them, but the branding is adorable. They are super cute, and plenty of them are fine. So, you know, it's just really hit or miss quality-wise, but look at that cute little guy. I've been wondering why his name is Steve. Steve? For a Frankenstein? Sure. So that's the kit. Let me show you how he came out. Here he is. Ready? Steve. I have to say, I think I love him. I actually am quite pleased with how this one came out. And this is quickly rising the ranks of my favorite Woobles that I've done so far. So we're going to talk through the entire pattern, all the little details. But overall, yeah, I'm quite pleased with Steve the Frankenstein. So let's dive in. The Wooble body is a little more, we'll say, blocky than your average Wooble body. Many Wooble bodies are very much egg-shaped. It's very much like an oval kind of shape. You like start at the bottom, you do some increasing, a lot of single crocheting, some decreasing, and you make this very much of an egg shape versus Steve the Frankenstein is much more of a block shape. So you I guess you increase much more quickly towards the top to kind of make the spiral widen without getting too tall. And then there are a lot of rounds of just single crochet all the way down. There are color changes, which does make this a little bit tricky. As opposed to if there were no color changes, it would just be a lot of rounds of single crochet, down, 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 and down. Very straightforward. So the color changes do make it a little bit tricky. But other than that, it's really a lot of single crochet and kind of many, many rounds down. So in that way, it's kind of good for a beginner to kind of just practice your skills, just kind of continue to single crochet all the way down. I did use yarn under as opposed to yarn over for Steve the Frankenstein's body. I have previous videos where I talk about yarn under versus yarn over. And I used a 3.5 millimeter crochet hook for this one. The idea with the yarn under, as well as using a slightly smaller hook than they recommend, is that you can maybe hopefully minimize the spacing between the stitches and the stuffing, the kind of the visibleness of the stuffing. You kind of want to really, really minimize that. You don't want to be able to see holes. You don't want to be able to see stuffing. So some combination of that smaller crochet hook size, as well as doing the yarn under technique, lends itself towards that. So this one actually came out quite well, I would say. You don't see a lot of stuffing, which is nice. And I have previous videos where I've talked about that, which I can link. But yeah, I'm pretty pleased with sort of how that body came out. The single crocheting was all fine. The color changes, as always, if you do sort of the standard color change method, which I did do, definitely leaves this kind of major jog here. You can really, really see where you're changing colors between like the black and the green and the black and the brown. There are ways to minimize this. I've learned a little bit about the different ways to minimize color change jogs. I saw somewhere that if you use yarn under, it might help minimize it, but that did not pan out for this one. Like I used yarn under, and I don't know. I'm not exactly sure why yarn under would help exactly minimize the jog, but there's definitely methods, and I plan to experiment with that in future videos. I'm hoping to kind of try out some different color change methods to see which one kind of has the smoothest transition. But for this one, I decided to just go with the standard. And I actually don't mind it. Frankenstein, he's like a monster. He's like assembled in a lab, right? Like, so having it, having that big jog almost adds to that sense of like, he's manufactured in a lab. Like, it's not totally even. Like, it kind of adds to the look. So I'm actually totally fine with it in this case. But in some cases, you kind of really don't want that jog. Also, you can't see it from the front. It's only when you turn it around to the back. So yeah, that was kind of interesting, but I did choose to go with sort of the standard color change. The Woobles videos, as always, kind of walk you through all the details for that, which is helpful. But like I said, the kind of the basics of the body were pretty standard. It was really the color changes that were tricky, very blocky. You get down to the bottom, you do a little bit of decreasing once you switch to the brown, and then you close it off. I will say I actually tried for the first time when I actually closed the hole on the bottom. So the Woobles has you use your embroidery needle, tapestry needle, you sew through each of the front stitches and you pull tight every time, and it closes really, really tightly, and then you fasten off. I ended up showing a little stuffing there, which oops. But this time I had seen someone else in a video at one point kind of do that same thing where they stitch their tapestry needle through the front stitch of every stitch on the bottom, but they don't pull tight until the very end. They kind of go, and then they pull tight at the end, and it like all cinches just zoop. And I tried that this time and it actually worked great. So I think I'm going to do that maybe from now on. There's an issue sometimes when you're closing the bottom hole on the bottom where every time you pull tight, it like distorts it a little bit. I mean, in the end, it looks fine. And the point is just to close it up and it's just the bottom and you're not really looking at that. But there's something about like pulling it tight, maybe you lose track of sort of the evenness of the circle of however many stitches there are, maybe 6 often at the end, versus in this case, I was able to kind of go through all 6, not pull tight until the very end, and then just pull, and it all pulled super evenly tight. So I feel like I may do that going forward. That was an interesting little just thing that I tried out this time and I kind of loved. So that is Steve the Frankenstein's body. There we are, Mr. Blocky. And now let's get into all the other pieces. So next up after the body was the arms. Now I've done arms like this a lot of times on other Woobles and other projects, but it's basically a few rounds. You start with a magic ring. So in this case, it started with green and you actually have a color change in the middle to black, and you do make 2 of them. Once you finish it off, you fasten off and then you single crochet kind of through the stitches to attach each arm to itself, I guess. You kind of close the arm and then you stitch it on. I've done this a lot of times before, but as usual, I had some issues and I had to redo some stuff. So first off, I think I sewed when I first was starting, when I was counting the rounds, I ended up sewing one of the arms 1 round lower than it should have been. So I had to take it out, do it again. But that's the nice thing about crochet. You can always do that. And then the other thing is you have this color change. You have this jog, like I was saying, we see the jog super clearly on the back here. There's also quite a clear jog on the arms. So there's that jog, and there is that jog. And so like you kind of want the jogs to maybe be on the back where they're not super visible, and I wasn't super paying attention. And so I had one of the arms was nicely sewn on with the jog in the back, and the other one I had it turned around and the jog was facing front, which I'm sure was fine. I could have left it, but I really wanted the jog to be in the back so it wasn't super visible and it wasn't that big a deal. Although unfortunately I had fully like closed it off. I had, sewn it all the way on and actually hidden my yarn tail in the rest of the piece. So I had to get my scissors and cut very carefully to pull it out to redo it. So like, I don't know, I'm such a perfectionist. I really like, once I noticed that it was wrong, I really wanted to fix it. And it wasn't like so far gone that I couldn't fix it. But at the same time, maybe I could have let it go. But in the end, I cut it out. It was not that hard. I had some weird like tails in a few different places and I had to pull them and do it carefully without messing up the rest of it. But in the end, I think it came out fine. And so I fixed it, and you can see the jogs are both now on the back, the backs of the arms, and the fronts are evenly, you see just the green to black color change kind of evenly, although I'm sure nobody would have noticed, so okay. So that was the arms. Next up was the bolts. These bolts, look at these. These are made in, they said gray yarn. It's really quite light gray. I will say when I saw that it said to pull out gray yarn, I thought, do I have gray yarn in this kit? I honestly thought it was white. I thought there was only white yarn, and then maybe they had like made a mistake or something, which of course not, but they do have light gray yarn, so it's supposed to be like metal for the bolts. And so these are just a couple of rounds. You end up doing back loop only to make this sort of ridge. It's a magic ring, and then back loop only to make the ridge, and just another sort of round of single crochet down. Let me show you this side. Mine, yeah, they look pretty good now. I thought they maybe didn't come out quite as neat as the videos. She had them like really, it was very much more clear, like 6 stitches in a magic ring, back loop only, ridge, and down one more, but they look pretty good. I'm in the middle of designing my very first pattern, which actually is quite geometrical and involves back loop only, so I've been messing around with that a bunch and experimenting. So this was very familiar, although this was a very small, small round to have to make it work with only two rounds to make these bolts, but then you sew them on. And they came out kind of goofy. I kind of love it, like Mr. Frankenstein and the bolts. Hello. So that was the end of all of the sewing. All of the rest of it was embroidery. So let's see. Next up, I think you embroider these stitches up here. When I first saw the picture, I just sort of envisioned that the stitches would be more like even, like almost like one line and then like zoop and zoop, like evenly two sort of smaller lines across. They walk you very carefully during the videos through how to exactly do this. So it's like, you go up in this round or go through this hole, and then you take your needle out 2 stitches down and 3 stitches to the left or something, and then you go up 1 stitch over, 1 stitch up, and 1 stitch to the right, or whatever it was. It was very, very super clear, and it comes out, it's not super even. It's sort of like this one's just barely over the line, and this one is also sort of much more on the bottom than the top, but I followed exactly the directions that they said. And it looks great in the end, I think. And honestly, you maybe don't want something like this Frankenstein monster to have super even stitches. Like the whole point is that he is like a scar or something, is sort of like an uneven thing, that it shouldn't be perfectly symmetrical or anything. So there's the little stitches above his eye. And then next up was the hair. And so this was kind of interesting. Again, embroidery, but you actually do quite a lot of embroidery. So this is like a little different than I think I've done quite like this before, but you basically you make these lines, and there's literally 15 of them. So you just kind of do it over and over and over again. You put your needle in, you put it again in 2 stitches down and make the hair. And then you bring your needle up through the back, like 2 stitches over and 2 stitches up, and so it kind of behind the scenes or behind the stitches makes a diagonal line, and then you go down, up, down, and it makes these lines in the back. Of course, it's a little funny because of the spiraling of the way that we're doing amigurumi. It ends up uneven in the back, but again, kind of similar to the color jog, like that's fine. Again, it adds to sort of the Frankenstein look, and so you end up with these little hairs just down all the way around. So that was also embroidery. And then last up was just the mouth and the little tooth. So again, you just do the mouth in black. It's just kind of a straight line across, a few stitches across. And then this little tooth is just one little white yarn, 1 stitch up to make his little tooth. So here he is, Steve the Frankenstein. And I have to say, as it was going, I was pretty happy with how he was coming together. I think I wasn't sure going into it, like, I don't know if I would think he was super cute or not. He does look cute, from the picture, and Halloween, of course, is really, really fun. But this is one of them that, like, really, as I was going and as I was adding on the little details towards the end, I just kept getting more and more like excited about, like, oh, he's really coming out cute. Versus I've had some other Woobles in the past where a lot of the details are really tricky. Something's a little bit messy, something like that, and he doesn't doesn't come out, you know, maybe as cute as I would want. So there we have it, Mr. Steve the Frankenstein. Let me just spin around. Here's his sort of blockiness. There's the top and the bottom. And yeah, I have to say, I think I really would recommend this kit, especially for someone who's like into Halloween, and kind of into like fun holiday things. But honestly, if someone out there is like a true beginner crocheter, I actually think this is a great kit to get started with. The color changes do make it tricky, and there certainly are some amount of sort of fiddly little pieces, and the embroidery, I guess, like the hair and the stitches and things like that are tricky, but the videos do walk you through all of the details as always. And I don't know, I think that there's something about this one that feels very satisfying, but not too hard. I've had plenty of other Woobles where there's like so much trickiness about it, where it's like, feels like maybe not ideal for a beginner. I feel like this one's like right on the border, that there's enough details where it could be kind of hard, but if you're up for the challenge, there's really some interesting things going on here, and you end up with this like really cute little guy. I just think it's so cool how these sort of raw materials of just like a few colors of yarn and this crochet hook can come out with this very, like, this guy with a lot of character. Like, I just really love how he has so much character. And compared to some of the other Woobles that are so much more basic, Kiki the Chick, you know, it's like a very basic, like, egg shape with some wings and like, there's a lot going on here, but it's not that hard. So honestly, I really think I would recommend this one, this Steve the Frankenstein, especially if you're looking for sort of a Halloween, you know, fun holiday, something. But honestly, I think that this would be a great one for a beginner. So there we have it, Steve the Frankenstein. Happy Halloween to everyone out there. And I only have a couple of Woobles left. The remaining ones that I have are all kind of Christmas or wintry themed, so stay tuned for future videos for those ones, as well as other videos where I move beyond Woobles and make other patterns and continue on my learning to crochet journey. So I think that's it for today. Thank you so much for keeping me company, and I'll see you next time. Bye.